In today's video, I am going to talk about the informal sector and informal employment. This is for the IGCSE geography spec for Edexcel, where you need to know the causes, but you also need to know the characteristics, including advantages and disadvantages, and I have highlighted it there. You do need to know a megacity example for this, but that will be something I will cover elsewhere. So informal employment, here's some examples of types of informal employment. Rickshaw drivers, rubbish collectors or sorters, street sellers and vendors are all examples of informal employment. These are jobs that are outside the formal employment sector, so jobs that would be in a traditional workplace. These are jobs that have come about and are kind of freestanding self-employed jobs, which I'm going to look at the characteristics later on. So the main causes of the informal sector, this often happens in developing and emerging countries. So this is not necessarily for people living in developed countries, but one of the major issues is that you have a difference between rural and urban areas. There's more poverty in rural areas, and because of that, people try to move to make their opportunities better. So there's lots of rural to urban migration in search of better opportunities and jobs and wages. However, lots of these urban places, even though they do have jobs, they don't always have enough jobs for the number of people that are coming in such huge numbers. So we get this huge migration of people in developing and emerging countries, but not enough jobs to meet them. This leads to unemployment, or some people only getting part-time jobs, and something we call underemployment in the formal sector. And because of that, because they don't have enough money to make ends meet, they end up either switching completely to the informal sector or doing jobs in the informal sector to top up what they're doing in their formal jobs. So this is one of the major causes of how we get the informal sector happening in the first place. As I said before, this is primarily a big problem in emerging and developing countries. The areas that are in the dark blue are areas where 90%, but even down to 50% of people are employed in the informal sector. I've highlighted two areas. So much of sub-Saharan and Central Africa has lots of informal employment, but also so does Southeast Asia, and there are also quite a lot of it in South America as well. Places like Brazil have lots of informal employment. So this is, you can see the opposite, less than 20%. Europe, Australia, North America has very, very low levels of informal employment. So in terms of the main characteristics or traits of the informal sector, it is completely unregulated by the government. So the government don't have any kind of formal control of it, and therefore they don't tax the people that are doing it, and they don't monitor it. Most people are self-employed. They work when and where they can. These are often service-based jobs. So examples we said, street selling, rubbish collectors, services that people need. Because it's unregulated by the government, the workers don't have any real benefits. So they don't have sick leave or healthcare benefits. It's also because it's unmonitored and you don't have to jump through many hoops. It's quite easy to get into. These often low-skilled jobs, but because they're unregulated and unmonitored, and they are self-employed most of the time, the money that people earn is very irregular. So they don't earn a consistent wage like you would in a formal job, where you would earn a monthly or yearly wage. The thing I've already mentioned is it's mainly existing in large numbers in developing and emerging economies. So those are the major traits of an informal sector, and these obviously have advantages and disadvantages for the people and the places where it exists. Something I've already mentioned, but unlike a formal job, informal jobs don't have set hours, so people aren't working 9 to 5. They work where and when they can to make as much money as possible. So that means they might work shorter or often long hours to be able to make money. They're not happening in traditional workplaces. This is a man cutting someone's hair in the street, and informal jobs can often take place in the street, but also can be done in people's homes. So in terms of advantages, one of the obvious advantages is that it actually provides jobs and income for the poorest people in society. So even though they're not earning lots of money, they can earn some money, which means they can keep themselves afloat. Also for the people living in those cities and countries, it can often provide cheap goods and services. For example, this man is pulling a rickshaw, that provides cheap transport for the people in that city. In terms of disadvantages, as we can see here, people are carrying huge weights and loads, and this is because there's no real safety and health regulations, because again it's not monitored, and so sometimes it can be quite dangerous, which means people can lead to injuries, and if they get injured, therefore they don't actually make any money because they're self-employed. So it is a perilous job often the time. Because it's unmonitored again, lots of kids often get into jobs. This boy is collecting rubbish to sell and get money from. There is often child labour, again, because it's unregulated by the government. So the main advantages are it can make money for people, it can give jobs, it can give some employment, but obviously the money is very irregular, it's not consistent, and there's no real kind of restrictions on what you can do, which can mean people can get injured, and also you can end up with children who would be going to school in another country ending up in these jobs, leading to a cycle of poverty.